Solving absolute value equations. And when we solve them, there are two cases to consider. In case one, the expression inside the absolute value symbol is positive or zero. So we've got this positive case, and the expression inside the absolute value symbol is negative. So we've got this negative case. And here's what I want to think about. If you have a positive case, I want you underneath this, just write drop the bars. Okay? And I'm not talking about somebody who's really good at wrapping, dropping some nice bars, okay? This means we're going to, in case one, we're just going to drop the absolute value bars. For case two, when it's negative, you're going to change the absolute value sign to parentheses, and put a negative sign in front of them. So case one is easy to do. Case two, we just change the absolute value sign to parentheses, and then we put a negative sign in front of them. And I will show you what that means in our next example. So here, I'm going to solve this equation, then I'm going to graph the solution set. And we're going to graph this on a number line. And what we do here, I've got f plus 5 is 17. Well, this part inside the absolute value bars could be negative 17, and I could get 17, so that's case 2 if it were negative. Or it could be positive 17, and I would get 17. That'd be case 1, it's positive. I have no way of knowing if what's inside this was negative or positive, so I've got to account for either one, because both of them would work. So I'm going to do case 1, which is my positive, and when you have your positive case, you just drop the bars. You write f plus 5 equals 17. Here's my first equation. Then I've got to account for my negative situation. And notice, we're going to end up with two answers to these problems because I'm going to get two different equations. So I change the absolute value bars to parentheses, and then I put a minus sign in front. And now I've got my two different equations, and I'm just going to solve them separately. Here on the left, f plus 5 equals 17. I'm going to subtract f5 from each side, and I get f equals 12. And then on the right side, I'm going to do that one, and when I do that one, a minus sign in front of parentheses switches the signs in front of everything inside the parentheses. You can think of it as like distributing a negative 1. Negative 1 times positive f would give me negative f. Negative 1 times positive 5 would give me negative 5 equals 17. Now I'm going to solve. I'm going to add 5 to each side. So I get negative f equals 22. And then whenever you have a negative in front of your variable, it's like negative 1. You can either multiply or divide each side by negative 1. It doesn't matter. I usually multiply each side by negative 1 because negative 1 times negative 1 would give me positive 1f, which is the same thing as f. And that's going to equal 22 times negative 1, which is negative 22. So here are my two answers. Just to show you that these would both work, if I took my first answer, 12, the absolute value of 12 plus 5 is the absolute value of 17, which is just 17. If I take my second one, the absolute value of negative 22 plus 5, I get the absolute value of negative 22 plus 5 is negative 17, which is just 17. So both of these work. They're both my right answer. Last thing I got to do is just graph them on a number line. I'm going to graph negative 22, put a dot above it, 12, put a dot above it. Whenever you make a number line, the only point I always want on there is 0, and then just remember, negative numbers are to the left, positive numbers are to the right. You don't have to try to space out 22 dashes or anything like that. You guys have done that enough, you know how it works. It doesn't have to be to scale or anything, just make a number line and put your answers on it. Now looking at this one, we've got my two cases, positive and negative. My positive case, just drop the bars, b minus 1 equals negative 3. Negative case, switch the bars to parentheses and put a negative sign in front. And now I'm going to solve my two equations. On the left, I just add 1 and I get b equals negative 2. On the right, I've got to distribute this negative sign, which is like distributing negative 1. Negative 1 times positive b gives me negative b. Negative 1 times negative 1 gives me positive 1. So I get negative b plus 1 equals negative 3. Subtract 1 from each side. I get negative b equals negative 4. Multiply each side by negative 1 because I want my variable to be positive, and I get b equals 4. Last thing we need to do is just put these on a number line, negative 2 and 4, and then I just put my points above them. And that's all we have to do. Pretty easy as long as we remember how to get my positive and my negative equations. The equations themselves are pretty simple to solve.